In 1971, the United States made a major shift in the global financial system. President Nixon ended the gold standard, which meant the dollar was no longer tied to a fixed amount of gold. This allowed governments to create money more freely. At first, this change didn't seem dramatic, and most people continued their lives without noticing any difference. But over time, the effects began to appear. During the 1970s, inflation started to rise sharply. By 1980, inflation in the United States had reached over 13%, one of the highest levels in modern history. This meant that prices were increasing rapidly. Everyday goods, services, and living costs became more expensive year after year. Companies were directly affected by this shift. Ford Motor Company saw the cost of steel, energy, and labor increase significantly. As production costs rose, the company had to increase vehicle prices, which affected consumer demand. At the same time, General Motors struggled with profitability. It faced rising expenses, but could not always pass those costs on to customers fast enough. This created pressure on its margins and long-term financial stability. Procter & Gamble faced a different kind of challenge. It sold everyday household products, meaning it had to carefully increase prices without losing customers. This led to repeated price adjustments across products like detergent, paper goods, and personal care items. Now, move forward several decades. After the 2008 financial crisis, central banks injected large amounts of money into the economy. Interest rates were lowered and borrowing became easier. This helped stabilize the system, but it also increased the amount of money in circulation. Then came 2020. During the COVID-19 pandemic, governments and central banks introduced massive stimulus programs. Trillions of dollars were added to the economy through direct payments, loans, and asset purchases. At first, this helped support individuals and businesses. But as the economy recovered, a new problem appeared. Demand returned quickly, but supply chains were still disrupted. Factories were slowed, shipping was delayed, and shortages became common. This imbalance caused prices to rise. Tesla raised the prices of its vehicles multiple times between 2021 and 2022. The company cited higher costs for raw materials such as lithium and nickel, which are essential for battery production. McDonald's increased menu prices across many regions. Rising labor costs, higher food prices, and supply chain disruptions all contributed to these changes. For everyday consumers, this meant paying more for the same meals. Walmart reported widespread price increases across groceries, household goods, and essential products. Because Walmart serves millions of customers, these changes had a broad impact. By 2022, inflation in the United States reached around 9%, the highest level in over 40 years. But here is the most important part. For many people, wages did not increase at the same pace as prices. This created a gap between income and cost of living. Even though people were earning money, that money was losing value. This is what inflation really means. It is not just prices going up. It is your purchasing power going down. Now think about your savings. If you keep money in cash and prices continue to rise, your money is slowly losing its ability to buy things. You may not notice it immediately, but over time, the effect becomes significant. You are not standing still. You are moving backward. This is why inflation is often called a silent force. It does not create sudden shock like a market crash. Instead, it slowly reduces the value of money over years. Now consider the difference between saving and investing. Saving protects your money in the short term. but investing gives your money a chance to grow. Over time, assets like stocks tend to increase in value, which helps offset the effects of inflation. This is why many long-term investors focus on owning assets rather than holding large amounts of cash. Because the goal is not just to keep money, it is to maintain its value, and ideally, to grow it. In the end, inflation is not something that might happen. It is something that is always happening, and the people who understand it are the ones who are able to adapt. Because once you understand how inflation works, you start making different decisions. And over time, those decisions can protect your financial future. In the early 1970s, the United States made a major decision. In 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard, allowing the government to create money more freely. At first, most people didn't notice, but within a few years, inflation began to rise rapidly. By 1980, inflation in the United States had reached over 13%. Prices were increasing so fast that everyday life became more expensive almost every year. Companies were affected as well. Ford Motor Company faced rising production costs as raw materials and labor became more expensive. At the same time, General Motors struggled with declining profitability because it could not raise prices fast enough to keep up with inflation. Even large consumer companies felt the pressure. Procter & Gamble had to repeatedly increase prices on everyday products like detergent and household goods. Now move forward to more recent years. After the 2008 financial crisis, central banks injected large amounts of money into the economy to prevent collapse. Interest rates were lowered and borrowing became easier. But the biggest shift came in 2020. During the COVID-19 pandemic, trillions of dollars were added to the economy through stimulus programs and monetary policy. At first, demand recovered quickly, but supply could not keep up. This created a new wave of inflation. Companies like Tesla raised vehicle prices multiple times between 2021 and 2022 due to rising raw material costs. McDonald's increased menu prices across the United States as food and labor costs went up. Walmart reported higher prices across many product categories, affecting millions of everyday consumers. By 2022, inflation in the United States reached around 9%, the highest level in decades. But here is the important part. For many people, wages did not increase at the same pace. That means even though people were earning money, their purchasing power was decreasing. This is how inflation quietly makes people poorer. It doesn't happen in one moment. It happens slowly, over time, through higher prices and reduced purchasing power. Now think about your own money. If your savings stay the same, but prices continue to rise, your money is losing value. You are not standing still. You are moving backward. This is why understanding inflation is so important, because it affects not just the economy, but your everyday life. And the people who understand it are the ones who can protect their money over time.